Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. So this webinar is slightly different to normal. I'm Amelia Bodle, the Hospitality and Catering Technical Advisor, and I'm joined by Jason Ben, the Industry Manager.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome.
And also on this session, we've got a guest speaker who I'm going to introduce in a little while from one of our lovely centres, and they're going to be giving their thoughts on getting back into practical kitchens. We did originally have two speakers planned, but unfortunately one dropped out this morning. So what we will be doing, however, is asking you, the audience, for your thoughts and comments. So this will mean that we'll definitely have some more time to do this. So our guest speaker is Tracy Paige from Cornwall College, based at the Camborne campus. Tracy's already welcomed back learners into both the classroom and kitchen environment. Now, we just need to highlight here that today's webinar is meant as a supportive sharing of ideas. We're not giving any advice which is meant to meet government guidelines or advising the best way to go about opening. Therefore, anything discussed is done so with that thought process in mind, and neither sitting guilds nor any of you working for centres whom talk will be held accountable for anything that's discussed. So I just want to assure you all of that. Initially, as with all our webinars, you're in listen-only mode. However, once we get to the question and answer section, I will unmute you should you wish to verbally ask a question, or you can indeed still type into the question box, and I can ask the questions to Tracy. If you have any other issues, do type into the box, let us know, and we will try and help. So the way we're going to run it today, we'll be starting with Tracy, whom will explain plans that they've already put in place, how they occurred, any special considerations, how well plans have worked, and any lessons learnt. Then any changes to curriculum planning for FY 2021. We'll then take questions. After this, we'll open up to you, the audience, for anyone to share their ideas or offer their thoughts if they've also already gone back into kitchens. Lastly, we'll talk about future plans and then close. So now for the exciting bit. Rather than as normal listening to me talking, I'm delighted to introduce Tracy Paige. Before we begin though, Tracy, I also want to extend a massive thank you to you from both Jason and myself, as well as the centres on the call, for taking the time to be with us today. So it's over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Amelia. Good afternoon, everybody. So down in Cornwall College, we've took a two-pin approach really, because we've got our college at St Austell, which is our sister college, who chose not to have their learners back, and they were trying it another way so we could, test the water between both sites, what's going to be best for our learners. And down at Camborne, we decided to have a look at the way we can get our learners back from our level 3s down to our technicals, down to our EHCP learners with obviously high needs and those who need to be self-isolating as well, and how we can get them through the process. So basically we started off the process by looking at the health and safety issues and what we've got in campus regarding the resources we have that we can change to government guidelines, which were set at 2 meters at the time, on how we can progress on getting our learners through. So as a department, we set out all the rules and regulations regarding the 2 meters marking down the corridor, and we come up with a one-way system. So we're lucky enough in our college down here to have 2 entrances and 2 exits really. So basically we had one main entrance, and the arrows were pointing to the classrooms of our theory class, which we ran 2 theory classrooms. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. And we done 2 practical class areas also. So the first and foremost, we had to get all the guidelines in. We set out our one-way systems. Each classroom, each entry to a classroom, each entry to in and out the building would have the sanitizer, the blue roll, and full PPE. So we provided face masks, rubber gloves, and even full face visors for our learners and our staff, which was then implemented that all staff and learners would participate in taking that in any lesson, even in the theory-based lesson. So when we set out our guidelines, we had to have the health and safety from the college come in, the principal and his team come in, just to go around the college in our department to give the okay and to correct us where we needed to be on the guidelines they've been doing in all other areas. I'm going to be talking about the catering department today, but we have had other areas in the college also open on them guidelines. So we was pretty, welcoming a lot of students back. Once we got the go ahead, we decided then to decide how the kitchens were going to be used. And we took our normal classroom in our practical area, which has the capability of 16 learners, and we turned that into 4 learners only. So we divided the kitchen up into 4. Basically, they had their own oven, stove, solid top. We then went round and robbed all the other kitchens of their refrigeration and freezers. So each individual learner had their own individual kitchen as such, and we had the luxury for that, so I'm grateful for our campus to have that. And then what we done was very similar into our practical areas, with having 4 and 5 in there, depending on what size the classroom was, for coming in to do our theory base. So that was the easy part, getting the actual area ready. Then what we done was decided a process of getting our learners in. So the college needed to know, because we had other areas open on campus, how many actually learners we were going to have in at a time, how many learners were going to come in, and how many members of staff. We restricted our staff down to 3 members of staff coming in. That was myself and 2 other colleagues. So if we then, for instance, our level 3 learners, we had 12 learners on. We wanted to come back and finish off the MVQ3. So we wrote to the individual learners and saying that this precise date or this date we would be opening the college up for 3 days to a maximum of 4 days for them to come in and finish off their qualification, which we'd obviously planned. Lucky enough, again, before COVID came down, we had a good percentage of our qualification met. And we then took it to the minimum units that we applied to gain the qualification. So we would then send out a letter to the learners asking them to come in the previous week. So we gave them 7 days notice, and this was followed up independently by phone calls from the tutors to the learners to make sure if they've got any needs or any concerns on our level 3s. And this is what happened. We would then submit our numbers to a main campus site, where they would then put all the numbers in, so we'd know exactly if we got 70 learners on site for them 3 days and how many members of staff are in. So once we got those in, we planned the process of getting their units done. As I said previously, there was 4 students in each practical area, which was 2, so it was 8, which left us 4 more learners to go into a theory classroom with a member of staff to cover the underpinning knowledge tests and get their folders up to date and all the information regarding that. And they done a round robin. So basically on the first day you had 2 cooking and 1 doing the planning and the underpinning knowledge, etc. And then they moved around in those areas. And that seemed to have worked, but we thought we could do it a little bit better. So when we had our level 2s in, we decided to do a practical session in the morning with 4, and have theory in the afternoon for them, and changed over. So we changed the groups down a little bit, just to operate in 1 classroom and 1 theory classroom. So that's what we proceeded on there. Also, what we've done then is when we started to get our full-time learners in with our EHCP learners, and that was one of my major concerns, was how these learners were going to react with full PPE on, and the understanding that we've got everything in place, from hand gel and sanitizer in and out the classrooms, etc. We also gave an open invite to the parents to come in. We had some EHCP learners and level 1 learners who decided they would rather wait till September, which was fine. So we've put that on hold and sent them some more online work. We had some parents in to see what the facilities were like and put their mind at rest, and then the learners come in. We done this the last 5 weeks at the college. So previous to that, like every other college, was sending out work, planned work and everything else for the learners to obviously stay occupied and to keep that link in. Again, one of the positives we done this year, or this time at Cornwall College, was I stayed in contact with all the learners by phone once a week. So on a Tuesday, that was my day to ring around the individual learners to see how they were for a welfare check, and then keeping them in contact with the college and what we were doing and what our plans were. And quite a lot of the families actually brought into that, which was quite, reassuring that we could go ahead with it. We've just finished, last week was my MVQ1s, we just finished. So over the period of the last 4.5 weeks, we've had our level 3s, our day release, our level 2s and our level 1s, which are on MVQs. Our technicals will obviously taking the protocol of doing the judging of the marks and then sending it off to sitting guilds. At the current climate at the moment, today, for instance, we've got our apprentices in, which are going through Gateway, and they're doing their, the recipe books, etc., in a safe environment, and we've got them on a one-to-one basis in a couple of classrooms, again, because we've got the luxury of that. So going forward, we've looked at this and said, right, okay, so we've got the protocol of knowledge, acknowledging the students, letting them know, and their timescales and that. We've offered a couple of students who couldn't make those dates for one reason or another, health issues and doctor's appointments, and they'll be coming in next week just to finish off before the term ends, because again, it's a different preference. The college term down in Cornwall, like a lot of other places, has extended a little bit. And we're now looking at opening the college in September, hopefully the 7th, when the government guidelines said we should be going back. And we just have to wait. There could be another spike and what have you. We'll just have to see. But we're working on the principle of where we used to run on a 4-day operation with our learners, we're going to a 5-day. So we're moving our technicals, instead of a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're moving to a Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. We're doing our MVQs and our day release, and we're now looking at doing a late afternoon session for our day release level 2s, where they will come in at 1 o'clock and work through till 7. Just basically to free up the kitchen space, because of obviously the staff entitlement we've got for each of our learners and our resources. So that's where we're at, and it's, as I say, it was more of a suck and see process, but I think comfortably we've got our learners through who wanted to get through and needed to get through. We've done that, but it's a case of now going forward as all of us in education is to try and find out where we can all share practices basically and planning. As Amelia said earlier, we don't know how many other colleges have started to look at this and had a look at plans. And I'd be interested if any other colleges to, I'm quite happy to help. I've come on to do a quick brief talk today, what we've done at Cornwall, and trying to better for our learners. And I think that's the most case, because I don't think this is going to change in the next 6 months or so. So, we're only in this for till January and maybe the long haul for an academic year. So that's basically what we've done at Campbell. Very brief and structured sort of thing, but hopefully if there's any questions, it might jog my mind a bit. But that's, I think, so where we're at. So if I can hand back over to you, Amelia, unless you've got something else.
No,
I've spoken to you before.
brilliant. Absolutely. So we've got a question come in from Darren, and he's asking, was there any reluctance from learners to return?
I don't know when we set up the work from lockdown in March, we sent out all the work and we wanted them to do. We found, like, for instance, refreshing our technicals. We got them onto Safer Food, Better Business to do the allergen test programs and what have you. And happy to say 85% of our learners brought into everything, and they were coming back before deadlines and that's across all qualifications. About 80% were really brought into it. Obviously, we had some learners on apprenticeships, for instance, who were still at work because they worked in care homes and what have you. So we had to work harder for them. But I think once you sat down with the learner, reassured them and told them what it's all about, and showed them that, with minimum effort from their behalf and a bit of organisation, I said, everyone brought into it. I'm sitting here now, IQAM files, and I think I've got 4 outstanding learners who didn't return out of 60. So 56 people we've got through, and that's quite a good return back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Darren also comments that he thinks you've done an amazing job.
Thank you very much, Darren.
which is quite a nice thing, isn't it? Absolutely. So
I think,
sorry, Tracy, carry on.
Yeah, I think, as I say, as an education establishment, we're all working it. I think it's something we can all take forward, and look and learn on what we're doing. So we're not saying ours is the best module by far, but it's a module what works for us under a short time frame, and if everyone else can embed that and embrace it, we should be good for them.
Darren, I've got a question around, you mentioned moving from a 4-day operation to a 5-day operation, and you briefly sort of touched on the impact that would have on teacher hours per learner. Is there any dispensation being given by the college to allow for some more hours towards teaching for next year, or are you still expected to come within the norm?
I think that the normal hours, what we've looked at is timetabling is very difficult because we don't know when the actual start date's going to be.
Yeah.
On the timetable at the moment, my team and everyone else is up to the hours they need to be, and provision for all the qualifications are being delivered. Now, if we have to, for instance, we've got a day release group of 14 students, and we have to try and look at that into a different way. If necessary, we will look at bringing some of our part-time staff in to help deliver that area. And I think what it is we've been told, like the government has said, one of the questions was if we've got a learner who's not completed the qualification on now, but they were going to progress to another qualification, the guidelines are that there will be funding for both courses, and they can finish off this one and then move on. So that overlapping period. So we've set out our stall to say, look, to deliver this, we're going to need this and that, and can we have it? And at the moment, and on this process, what we've done now, because I've only had 3 staff in, and then on their courses, and then as soon as their course is finished, they go and the other staff come in to complete theirs, familiarization with the learner. So that's what we're going to be looking at, moving it forward to 5 days. And if I need an extra day to do that, I've had the okay from Powers to be up above at the moment.
Okay, wonderful. Perfect.
Perfect.
What about before you returned to bringing learners in? Who was responsible for the risk assessment within the establishment or
Right,
within the catering department? Was that yourself, or was that?
The team went round. We went round and we done our mock. So we had to put a plan in. First thing we done was done a written plan of our establishment, because every establishment's different. So we was lucky we had 2 entrances and 2 exits, so a lot of the learners wouldn't meet. Even to go into the bathroom, if they needed to go for an admin break, then one of the lecturers would contact the other one and say, right, I've got little Joey going out for a minute, and we would isolate, one at a time sort of system. The change-ins, for instance, in Whites, because we're caterers, what we said was any member of the learning group was coming in, they've got their own transport car or whatever, they could come in Whites, where we normally have a strict policy, no Whites wearing into the building and home. So they could come in from home in their Whites, and they could go straight into the classroom. Those who had to get public buses, we then done 1 in, 1 out into the changing rooms. We measures need to be that sort of stuff. So once we've done that, we had as I said, we had the principals team round, the head of college come round, the head of health and safety across the college, and the advisories come in, and just to check everything. Because I wasn't happy as in the department to sign off all this health and safety, and if anything went wrong, and it didn't, but I'm just saying, just for that legislation, there's always somewhere to blame if something does go wrong. I didn't want it on my doorstep, so I just said the college came in and they done their whole thing with the health and safety exec and everything else, and they cleared it that way.
Okay, wonderful. I think that also answers Anthony's question. He's asked a question about how you're handling the changing rooms. It was 1 in, 1 out, I think you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just broke up on that bit, but yeah, I thought that's what you said.
Yeah, sorry.
Wonderful.
We've got
a few questions coming in now. Sorry, do you want to go over these questions that are coming in, Amelia?
I can do, yeah. So we've got one about tasting the students' work. So have you actually tasted the students' work, Tracy, and were you comfortable doing that in the current situation?
The current situation was we discussed that, and what we said to the student is obviously with the ratio of 1 to 4, it wasn't too bad. I had some of the lecturing team, including myself, wasn't worried about it too much, because obviously the heat process and 75 and above, etc. So we looked at that. A lot of it was, but we done the test at the end. Instead of testing during the course of the lesson or whatever, we go through and test individual components. We looked at it and test the end bit of the meal where it was applicable. So if it was a sponge or something, we just looked at it and judged it on bits and pieces, the color, the texture and everything else, more so the learners could take the food home, because that's what we done. we made a preference at what they cooked. They were quite happily, we boxed up and took home once it was all cooled down, etc. But I did, if they had a soup or something, a lentil soup and that and bits and pieces, I did try it. I've got to openly admit that, and it didn't worry me because I had a clean spoon, like the process. You know, what we did do is obviously when we go into the stove in their own individual kitchens and we had a flow way through that, we'd ask the student to step back. So where we was at a point, we said, if you step back a minute, I'll come in, got my spoon and my jug, tasted it, gave them the feedback, and then moved away.
Perfect. No, that sounds great. Brilliant. And did you do any front of house, Tracy, or was it purely just
On
kitchen?
our front of house, we had the level 3 hospitality service and leadership qualification. They came in and they had a couple of bits to pieces to do, which the member of staff reenacted. And again, because the group was so small, we only had 6 candidates on that, so we broke them down to 3 and 3 again. So the tutor gave 3 of them some assignment work and paperwork they needed to get up to date and bits and pieces and evidence. They were in one part in the reception area, and the other task actually happened in the restaurant itself. But adhering to all the rules and regulations, they had their own entrance, which was the main entrance. Customers would come into the restaurant, and then they would have the ablutions. What we done with that is because in the restaurant for area we have a male and a female, and we had a disabled toilet and the cross-gender toilet, etc., as I call it. And basically we only opened that one up and closed the other 2 down, because after every single lesson, though the learners cleaned down and the staff orchestrated that, at the end of each session, so for instance, if we'd done a morning session and finished at 12:15, we'd have the in-house cleaners, as we call. We just give them a quick call. 2 ladies would pop over with all their safety gear on and give it a quick wipe over as well, the door handles of the fridges and that, ready for the 1:15. And then when the lesson finished at 4:15, the 2 ladies would come back again and they would just do the same operation again in the kitchen. So in the kitchen setup, we would have a stainless steel table, which is acting as their workbench, and underneath that would be every single pot, pan they needed for that criteria, what we got ready already. So they had an individual cupboard, basically, install cupboard and equipment cupboard underneath their tables or in the surrounding area of their workplace, alongside their own individual fridges.
Brilliant. So they were literally, sort of working within their sort of a small triangle, so to speak.
They had their own bubbles, and then the only person whatever went into that was the lecturing staff. So as I say, to ask them to step aside, taste the food, like I did in my lessons, and then because we didn't make it compulsory, but most lecturers did in fact do that, and then they've got their own individual kitchen. So and it's quite easily done. Obviously I've got my little 2-meter wooden stick and worked it all out, but it can be done. It's just how many numbers you've got on a course. Now realistically, if you've got a day release course and there's 25 in it, then it's a bit more different than me with 12 in it. So again, the numbers, and that's why we're going to look at doing an evening, because obviously that will help out in the kitchen ratio, because we don't want to open up all our training kitchens. In Cornwall, in Campbell, we're lucky we've got 7 training kitchens we can use. We haven't got enough staff to put them all in one go. So we've literally closed half the area down with just our 2 training kitchens and our 2 theory classes, and we're trying to work it out from there.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Anthony has asked about your groups for next year, sizes of 4. Is that going to be the same going into next year, or are you going to be increasing that?
Well, again, we're going to go on government guidelines, really. I mean, at the moment they've done, public places, pubs and hospitality, because they've got to try and kick that industry off. It's down to a metre. Now, ideally, I would like to keep it as a 2-metre thing, just for the safe priority of the learners and the staff. Now, what we will look at the moment is to say we've probably got around about 55, 60 learners coming back in September, or when we reopen, and clever timetabling and the use of the areas we've got. For instance, if we've got learners who've got their own transport and their MVQ2, for argument's sake, or whatever, and we have to do 3 practical classes, now maybe the case would be 9 till 12, 1:15 to 4:30, and because they've got their own transport and I can get a member of part-time staff in or whatever it is, maybe I could look at running a 3-hour session, keeping the same pace with all the learners. But until we get any more guidelines, we've got a system what works for those sort of numbers. As I said, we've got the luxury we can open a couple more kitchens if we need to, and got the staff in. But I'm aware, like up at St Austell, our sister college, they've only got 3 what they call training kitchens. So, you know, it's what the college has got and provided in their areas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have got some more questions for you, but in the meantime, if anybody does want to come on and verbally ask some questions of Tracy and what's been going on, or alternatively, you may wish to voice what you're doing or what you're planning, then please raise your hand and we can open you up. But in the meantime, we'll just carry on with some questions, if that's okay. So a question here from Phil is, did you temperature check the students on arrival? How have you supported students who may have been shielding households?
The first thing again is the letter what went out to the learners to say this is their time they were going to come in, and it had a basic wording of, is anyone's been ill or shielding or whatever, can you let us know? Because that's the first thing we done. The second thing is on the phone call that we done to learners was, how are you doing, have you been ill, have you shown any symptoms, anyone in the family? And again, the response down in Cornwall was lucky enough was no one has, or someone said, I've had a slight cold and what have you. When they came in, as soon as they walked through the door, we set them at different times. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. So basically, if I've got 2 groups coming in, or on a day sort of thing, which we're going to do, like the front of house, for instance, we wouldn't have them into the area till 10 o'clock. We'd have another group in at 9 o'clock. So that group of 4 or 6 learners, what we had in, would have an hour to get ready, get comfortable, get into their positions, get sanitized and everything else, ready to do a day's work. And then the others would come in at 10 o'clock, and we manned the door for that time. So if we had a group at intake coming in at 9:15 and one at 10 o'clock, the member of staff would be there to give them the PPE equipment, make sure they're sanitized, make sure they know where they're going, give them the routes and that. And that's on the first day. Obviously, when they come in the second day, they started to know the procedures and what have you. But temperature check we didn't do, but we did ask questions, how are you feeling and everything else. And, young people, I'm all right, just up early again, and that sort of stuff. But we monitored it, and lucky enough, we had no one fall ill during that time. And I've had no reports to say, after, my course coming in or since then, I've been unwell.
Yeah. And did students bring in their own ingredients, or did you provide them for them?
No, we provided for them. Basically, what would happen is I would talk to the teaching team. They would tell me that we need to get X, Y, and Z in for covering the syllabus for the qualifications. I would then order it and it would come in. And then what would happen is we would have it come in Friday for the Monday. Right. Apart from the fresh goods on the fish and that, but everything was, so then it was still sitting in the stores, just in the thing, just to, as a safety precaution, really, 48 hours, and you're not touching any packaging anyone else has done until then. And then what we done was, staff would come in, I'd come in 8 o'clock in the morning, go to the stores, get the commodities ready, and then send them down into the kitchen, where the lecturer and staff who was teaching the student would then put it onto an individual tray. So they wouldn't be back and forward to an area. They would have all the ingredients they require for them dishes on the day on their bench ready.
Right, okay, wow. Very good. Let's see what else we've got coming through.
I'm wondering, Anthony's asked quite a few questions. So I'm wondering, Anthony, whether we take you off mute. I mean, you can shout no as soon as I take you off mute if you don't want to, but whether we sort of take you off mute and you perhaps ask a question, so that at least there's another voice on here. So you're self-muted currently.
I'll do impressions.
There we go, Anthony, you're on.
Yeah, we're on. I've just been doing some planning these last couple of days to open our restaurant end of September. So obviously I've been doing kitchen plans where we're obviously social distancing in place, putting one-way systems around, and obviously working through that with obviously my boss and obviously the health and safety officer for the college.
Okay, brilliant, fantastic. So you were asking a question about the RWE, weren't you?
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously, if anyone else was actually opening up the restaurant, obviously what plans they've got in place for that.
I think what we're doing in Cornwall, Anthony, is that I think we're making an executive decision that we'll probably wait till September to see what the government guidelines are. But some of our restaurants we won't be opening and probably till December regarding our silver service one and what have you. So the front of house qualification to still be coming in them smaller groups and top ending them with the theory and the principles of it all and the practical area, but not actually serving live customers. We are looking at opening our refectory though come September, obviously staff and students, and we're looking at, and I've asked if they can normally lunch is 12:15 to 1:15 at Cornwall College, but I'm asking if we could possibly have different lunch breaks as well and set times, 45 minutes or whatever, and have 3 45-minute sessions instead of just having 1 hour to ease on the flow. But obviously you're losing a certain percentage of the area, surface area of your restaurants because of the limitation in that.
Well, we've actually got 2 refectories we service on site as well, and we're doing a system where we're doing breakfast from 7:30 till 9:30, then doing a deep clean for an hour, and then reopening from 11 o'clock and doing basically service till about 1:30, 2 o'clock, with each floor being designated down. We've looked at our seating in our refectory. We can seat 50 down at one time.
And is that with restrictions?
We have some restrictions in place, and obviously we've got a separate entrance and exit for that as well.
It sounds like you're luckier than some then, but that's as I say, we look at it. I think it's all about planning. It's all about making sure the crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and you are going to get blips. You get one learner come down, he's coming down the wrong way of the one-way system. It's just a gentle nudge back up, and and that's the only thing is, like I say, familiarization. The young learners don't worry as much. They've been told not to worry as much, and not like us, like myself, who's my wife has to stay home and she's been self-isolating. So that was a big question for me to return to college, to be honest. Unfortunately, my wife had a couple of operations last year, so it was that case. I wasn't selfish, but I had to reassure myself and the family for me to return to work into a safe level. And that's what was so important about the numbers. I know we feel pressurized sometimes that we've got to get these numbers in and people going, but common sense has got to prevail. If we've got more than I'd say maximum of four staff in it at one time in the area working, and that's why I'm saying if we have to do later lessons, those staff can come in there, and they've brought into it. The staff have been excellent, really, because they understand the current climate. We're still employed. We've not lost a job. They've got a job to do. The learners are going to come there, and it's just looking at your courses, your learners, and your facility, how you can do that.
Yeah.
Anthony, are you looking at a reduced offering in the refectory areas for next year?
Yeah, we're looking at doing more of a grab and go item, and obviously we're doing maybe 1 or 2 hot dishes which we can sort of pre-pack in some disposable heated dishes and stuff. Yeah. Obviously to speed up the service, and obviously have so many coming through sort of every half hour to try and at least try and facilitate by feeding half the college.
Will you be doing a takeaway service?
No, I did actually try and put that in place with obviously doing an order system, but the college seemed to think it would have been a bit too complicated to sort of track and manage alone.
Because I was contemplating with the idea of click and pay basically. So they come in, they ring up in the morning. We send the menu out via email to all staff email on what we're offering and provision of, and then getting them to ring through and saying, right, okay, could I have such and such and such, and my time period would be that 15 minutes, and we could get it ready, and they would just come in, collect it and go. I mean, because obviously it depends on how many staff are back, and we're up to full capacity and everything else. I mean, there's considerations looking at will some theory lessons for some courses be taught online still, like we did during lockdown.
Yeah, I think we're actually planning to do that, half the week at home and half the week in college.
You've got another question, Anthony, from Katie. She wants to know how you're managing the seating in the refectory.
We've actually got people who are employed by the college to facilitate this. Obviously, like cleaners or members of staff who are actually going to be policing the situation, because that was one of my concerns, because obviously I've got to look after safety of my staff in the areas with obviously the students. And obviously I didn't want to be policing every student going. So they've, the college have actually come in place and put, I think they designated 2 people to sort of manage the flow into the refectory, and obviously people to be disposing their own waste as well from tables. That will have to be policed.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a comment as well about that, you know, there are places that are looking at takeaway counter service and delivering pre-orders to staff rooms and classrooms, with the possibility of opening up to customers from January. So somebody's definitely thinking about that, Tracy.
Yeah, I think basically we're looking at, it's all ideas. We're said with our Trevenson restaurant and that we probably won't open till December, just because I think what the college is looking at in perspective in our department is we're looking at obviously the educational needs and not so much the financial needs of getting customers in, because we know that if it opens up in December, we still should have plenty of time to get the customers in, because majority of the customers in Cornwall come to college and ask are the old age pensioners and the, you know, what I call the blue rinse brigade, bless them. They come in on a Wednesday because B&Q's got 10% off and they come across for lunch. Now they're more of a vulnerable group and they will probably want more convincing that things are safe. And as you know now, they've closed Leicester down. They opened the pubs on Saturday in some areas and they've closed the pubs down in Saturday this week already because of spikes or you know, COVID going round in the pub, you know, and we've got to try and get our customer base back regarding that. It's no good having a restaurant open with only 2 or 3 in. It doesn't reflect on anything.
No, absolutely.
So it's to say it's a learning curve. It's work in progress. And I think what I'm concentrating on, rightly or wrongly, is to get the learners through, you know, back into the swing of it in a safe environment, so we can then go about our teaching business as quick as we can. And then regarding our restaurants, I mean, the refectory's open, and what we've already said there is in September, if we do open the refectory, we won't have any passing trade. It will only be staff and students, and they will only get in if they've got ID. And we're looking at how to do checks on that with staff if they ring through times.
Brilliant. I've just opened Stuart up because he's got some questions. Fire away, Stuart.
Yeah, hi, Stuart Smith here from Harlow College. Great to hear what everyone's up to and how they're looking at the curriculum planning for next year. I mean, for us as a campus and a college, we are zoning our campus into 3 zones. So we're going to have a red zone, a yellow zone, and an amber zone. So the students will be self-contained within them zones. So within them zones, there'll be different buildings. So basically, there'll be an entry and exit point for each of them areas. And obviously, I appreciate that won't happen for every campus because that's impossible. But for our catering provision, which we run downstairs as well for our students and staff, we're going to be using a pop-up concept like you guys have spoken about, but in them zones. So we'll go into the zone for a sort of a lunch break service and provide some grab and go concepts for our learners and staff. And we'll pop up in them 3 zones and obviously rotate our food provision of what we're offering in between them zones on a weekly basis or a daily basis to change what our offering is, basically. So that's one thing we're looking at doing. But our delivery model for September, we have 2,400 students on campus at any one given time. So what the exec team have asked us to do is to split that into half to reduce the amount of students and staff on campus at one given time. So our department have been given an afternoon slot. So Monday to Friday is our delivery sort of time frames, but we have 1 to 4 o'clock every day. So no students from our department or our area will be on site in the mornings, and all their lessons will take place at 1 to 4 to obviously reduce the amount of congestion and crossing over on campus and in our zones. That's one thing we're looking at, which obviously has its problems because we have 2 training kitchens. One of them's a skills kitchen where we've got these sort of designated sections, and the other one's our RWE. So for us to social distance correctly in the RWE, I feel would be more challenging compared to our skills kitchen that we've scoped out and feel would be a lot easier to manage. And then also it's classrooms, because we only have one teaching classroom. So it's kind of them challenges that are sort of we're facing to see how we can still deliver and have practical lessons on site and theory lessons, and also how we split that up. So for example, our new students that particularly haven't got the digital innovation or the technology at home, or don't know what Shobi is or these digital tools that we use, is who do we focus on first to support, and do we leave our level 3s that are progressing, do we leave them off the timetable slightly more and do more online learning at home? So they're kind of the questions that we're working through at the moment as a centre.
That's quite interesting. I think what you're saying is cutting your workforce down by 50%, which is quite good. And your zones is a good idea of returning the food. Obviously, our health and safety would probably disagree with me there, because obviously we're quite a campus which is quite spread out a little bit within our area. The thing in Cornwall, which you probably don't have, is we have transport issues, massive transport issues, because obviously we've got people coming in from 45, 50 miles away, from Bodmin and Weybridge and from Land's End and all the way up. And that's one of our issues we've got to do, because obviously if you're at Harlow, you've got a good connecting bus service and train service and what have you. Unfortunately, we've either got a horse and cart, tractor, or the college buses, and at the moment no one's made a decision regarding college buses and coming in, ferrying in the students. Because if we cut them up, we might have to zone our learners from logistic points of view. So if we've got 30, 10 or 15 learners through the Newquay area, Bodmin and whatever, we bring them in one day, and then the local Redroof, Camborne and Truro area will come in another day. But I don't think any of us has thought of that. So what you've put there on your point is very good for me, and to give me a bit of food for thought. So thanks for that, Stuart.
You're welcome, and thank you for all your bits that you've been doing. And I've got a long list of stuff that I've been writing down, so thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Brilliant.
We are starting to just have a few comments relating to mitigation for next year. What I will say, we've been asked if we are sort of looking into that at City and Guilds. The answer to that is yes, absolutely. We've already started to make some noises around mitigation required for next year's curriculum, and also Ofqual have just recently released some information as to what they're looking at and expecting as well. So that is something that is forthcoming. We are just going to ask of you all at the end of this webinar just to give us a brief indication of where your departments are going with regards to numbers, any potential changes, etc. But we'll talk about that at the very end, if that's okay. So just to sort of prevent any more questions around that, yes, mitigation is something that's high on our agenda at the moment, and we are working through that as we speak.
Yeah, and we will be able to sort of give some more clarity around if there's anything we can do from an MVQ perspective. So that's what a lot of the questions are sort of relating to. And clearly, if you are changing the RWE requirement that you have, so someone's mentioned about, they used to have a restaurant, but they're thinking about turning it into a shop or sort of service for as we've already heard, refectory service, etc., then that's absolutely fine, because you're still offering it in what would be a realistic work environment. It's just that you're changing it slightly. So you will need to, talk to us about those things and get them agreed with EQAs, etc. But we can absolutely work with you to do those sorts of things. That's not an issue at all. Now, Darren wanted to sort of talk about, or he wanted to sort of share with us some of his planning for next academic year. So I thought that might be perhaps a good place to go now, sort of what, plans that people might have for next academic year. So Darren, Sharp, I'm going to take you off mute. You're off.
Hi, afternoon, everyone. Tracy, thanks for that input. I thought that was what you've done has been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Like the rest of you, we're looking again at next year, and at the moment we're going to follow guidelines, but we are planning and working towards opening our restaurant at the start of October. Again, we're considering all things like changing menus, style of service, capacity, giving customers time slots where they must arrive within those time slots. In terms of curriculum, we're trying to create a social bubble for hospitality and catering. We're delivering our practicals within college with all our theory delivered online, and then students just coming in for theory to do assessments. But we are looking at changing from the level 2 technical to 7138 and 7103, so learners aren't reliant on the restaurant to complete assessments, so they can do 7138 and 7103. We're picking all the units for the rules combination that can be done using simulation to help with that, because what we don't want to do is get halfway through the year, especially with the technicals, and the restaurant have to close again, or there'll be no feasibility to open it, and we don't have live customers.
Yeah, absolutely, and
Right.
that's a really sensible option.
So yeah, you know, it's going to take a lot of consideration, I think, from estates, and like the guys have already mentioned, people already mentioned, the getting estates and health and safety involved is key, I think, and getting the buy-in that maybe catering might need a bit more resources.
I don't know if the old DHO will be popping his head around sooner or later in September to all of us lot, because we've not seen him for a while, and the old Safer Better business has been a bit punished. But that'd be interesting if if anyone gets a visit from the DHO, because obviously we're doing these changes, and they might not think they were going on the guidelines. You know what they're like. We're very PC, and we try to do our best for health and safety and whatever. But it'd be interesting if anyone's out there and they do get a visit or a sign of a visit, if they could let us know, that'd be great, because obviously I think as a group of colleges, wherever we are in the UK, I think we're sharing ideas, and I think a contingency plan would be following on to save a lot of people, the heartache.
Yeah, sorry, on the FSA website there is a reopening a restaurant checklist.
Yeah.
And the first 2 items on the checklist are about notifying EHO that you intend to reopen again. Yeah, so, go to the FSA. There's tons of guides.
And we've got a note. That's perfect. Thank you for that, because I didn't know that.
There's a checklist.
I'll send that link out to everybody after this webinar, so you've all got access to it, because it's a full checklist. You're absolutely right. It goes through notification of, and then it goes through all the things that you should check prior to planning and preparation, site checks, the equipment checks, ingredient checks that you should be doing, and also the social distancing measures. But as well within that, there's also links, isn't there, Darren, to specific latest information.
It's a full hazard breakdown. I think there's a for the kitchens, there's something about keeping staff safe. There is the checklist, and there's one other document on there which is really good, but it does follow all hazard, from the back door to going out. It's brilliant.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, we'll send that out.
Fabulous. Tracy, did you say that you were changing your curriculum plans for next year?
Yeah, basically I've had a look, obviously on learner numbers and areas. So what we've done historically, we do a technical down here, the 6120. We do for the years I'm involved with, we do an MVQ1, we do an MVQ2 hospitality and service one, which obviously that came up with the idea of what we're doing. So I'm taking those 2 out of the equation, and I'm going to do the 7138, and that would be obviously the certificate and the full diploma. Now that's because we have certain learners, 16-year-olds, who are coming in with various, not C's and above, etc., or 4s and 5s. We have a couple of learners got EHCP and other issues. What the learners bring in all sorts of our areas. So I've looked at it, and because I was fed a line a little while ago that if we got a learner at the moment who's been studying this year who's not completed for one reason or another, with not stopping their progression on to the next qualification, the government said that the funding will be linked for both qualifications. So until they've completed the first qualification on now, and then leading on to the second one. So that pleased my bosses quite a lot. So with that in mind, if we do the 7138 and I've got a learner who does the certificate for the 14 credits, and next year we can open it up again and so they can do the full diploma. There's a progression route there, and it eases a lot, because what I've done is all the health and safety, food safety, dietary requirements, healthy eating options can be delivered to the diploma and the certificate. So the certificate only needs to be one cooking unit or two, which I think off my head I'm going to do basic dough and stock sauces and soups, for instance, to get their credits up. So that's how I've looked at it, and we're looking at it for our level 3s, where we used to do a level 3 used to be either patisserie on its own and kitchen larder. We're now looking at doing a combined, where we can still deliver the patisserie units to get the qualification and the kitchen larder, but it's under the same learning aim, etc. So that's the way we're going there, and then we can set our classes out a little bit clearer, because it doesn't make the difference, especially in the early stages. Where I'm looking at is for the 7138, as I said before, the food safety and health and safety and all the other, that's what I'm going to concentrate on, the start, and probably the dough unit for the cooking side. So we get all the basic elements that all learners need out the way, and then hopefully we'll have more guidance come December, etc. If not before, so we can progress with them qualifications.
Brilliant. And we've got sort of quite a few. So Katie's sort of said, unfortunately, she doesn't have any audio, so she's only listening in. Otherwise, she would have spoken. But she's been delivering the certificate and diploma this year. And Victoria, who's in the same position as well without audio from Central Beds, is also switching to 7138 for next year, as their restaurant isn't going to be opening until 2021. It is worth saying at this point, though, that in terms of sort of restaurant quals, if you look at the 7103, there's an awful lot in there, which it is absolutely acceptable to do via simulation. So if anyone's wanting to deliver certificates, etc., at level 2, level 1, level 2, then it is worth having a look at those, because many of the units, it's actually written into the assessment pack and the handbook, if you have a look, that simulation can be used. So you should still be able to deliver something in terms of sort of front of house, even if you don't have access to sort of customers, etc.
Hi, Amelia. I think that is it 7103 for the certificate.
Yes.
You only need 15 credits.
Yeah.
Do you, I think? And there is one unit, food and beverage service, which is a 15 credit unit in there as well.
Yeah, that's the level 2. Absolutely.
Yeah, which makes it even easier to deliver. If you dovetail it with the 7138, you can cover all the food safety and everything on that qualification.
Yeah, definitely. And yes, you wouldn't need sort of external customers. You could sort of use students, other members of staff, even to some degree, depending on what it is, cardboard cutouts, really, because it's about the actual sort of service, etc. So they are definitely worth sort of having a look into. Yeah, thanks, Darren, for that. Absolutely.
Regarding the food service, Amelia, when you look at the industry at the moment, they're looking at delivering food to a point, like a table near the customer, then the server steps back and the customer goes to the table and then picks it up. Because I don't know where the guidelines cover, actual table service. So will that still be accepted?
Well, I suppose it's kind of like the style of service, and that's something as well that I think we're going to have a look at in terms of mitigation. It'll be relevant to sort of each unit, etc. The issue is with certain units, then the expectation is about, from the right, from the left, etc., etc. So obviously it wouldn't be done in that manner. But you're right, that's exactly what's going on. I interestingly did go out at the weekend, and I went to 2 different places and was served in completely different manners in both places. And one of them very much was walk to the end of the table, leave it on a tray on the end of the table, and you sort of then put it in front of yourselves. Whereas the other one was, I think, a little bit riskier because they were sort of leaning across. So I was probably more comfortable with the first one than I was the second one, to be fair. Katie said she's thinking of having a table next to the customer that the food is delivered to, and the customer takes it from the table. Yeah, and I think that's seems to be what a lot of people are thinking about, isn't it? Excellent. Okay, so I'm not sure whether we've sort of got any sort of further questions. Caroline did ask a question right at the beginning. It was more about sort of education in kitchens, etc. So again, we are looking as well at mitigation, Caroline, in terms of you know, the situation that you're finding yourself as well in the sort of the prison sector, where you're obviously having to deliver and you're not going to be allowed back into the main prison kitchens. So yes, we're looking at, you know, what we can do to support you with restrictions, and whether there's anything we can do to give you some mitigations to allow with the qualifications in the future. So yes, we're definitely sort of, that's forming part of the, you know, the sort of the work that Jason and I are currently doing. So be assured that yes, we're absolutely doing that. So has anybody got any sort of further questions or anything that they want to sort of want to share? Okay, so I've got a question from Tracy with regarding the safest qualification to deliver next year at level 3. Should restaurants close again? Currently delivering a level 3 MVQ professional cookery, kitchen and larder, and patisserie separately, which possibly seems high risk. Yes, Tracy, it's a really good question, and I think, I suppose to some degree it's a little bit more difficult with MVQ because you know, it's expected that that's done in an environment that then sort of feeds through to the restaurant, which is clearly, you know, serving customers in some way. So I think that's where we're sort of having to look at things. So I suppose in essence, you know, sort of VRQs are less risky in terms of the fact that they don't need a customer as such. From that perspective, obviously, you're still, you know, I appreciate you're still producing food, and therefore, you know, we'll need to actually distribute that. But, you know, if you're sort of thinking about some of the takeaways, etc. areas, but if you have got any ideas, you know, that or things that you want us to specifically consider, then we're absolutely more than happy to add those to our list to be able to do that for you.
We've had a couple of questions about the recording of the webinar. So long as it records, we will aim to send that out, Amelia. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, it sort of takes a couple of hours to sort of finish recording, and then you know, we then need to sort of get it uploaded, and hopefully we'll be able to release that to you tomorrow. There is another of these sessions on tomorrow as well, so the idea is to record that as well. So hopefully, you know, at least one of them will be working, so we'll be able to sort of release that out to everybody as well. And Phil's made a comment about he hopes that colleges don't move away from food service and keep delivering those skills. Absolutely, Phil. Yes, and I think that's my sort of point really about, you know, still being able to use 7103. Really, you're still able to you know, give those skills, etc., and use your restaurants and obviously your restaurant tutors, etc. So delivery for the 7103 is still, you know, perfectly acceptable, so you should be able to do that.
Anthony's raised that he's also got risk assessments from all his suppliers, probably worth getting to show health and safety teams in the college that you're getting food delivered to the site safely. Agree with that. And once again, I'll just remind you that I will send out the FSA checklist to everybody, which includes ingredient checks. I'm not sure if it goes into that detail, but I'll send it out to you anyway.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, I think if, unless there's anything else that anyone wanted else to, I'll sort of give everyone a little bit more time in case they have got anything else that they want to sort of type in.
Just before everybody does sort of start shutting down their the webinar, what would be really useful to support our insights and our work on the mitigation as and when it arrives, and we're also concerned that people do go on a bit of leave at this time. If you can provide us either through the question box, which would be our preferred method now, if you could put in there just some little brief information on what you're thinking of next year, a little bit of an insight into student numbers. Just literally, are they up, are they down, are they very much similar to what you've experienced this year? Are you thinking of changing over to a different qualification model? Is your intake September, or are you considering another intake in January, for example? If you've got any insights you can give us, that would be really, really useful going forward, just to support that mitigation piece that we're doing. So if you can do it either through the question box and just leave us a few of your thoughts, or alternatively drop us an email, myself or Amelia, that would be really appreciated.
Brilliant, fantastic. I just want to give my massive thanks to Tracy today. Tracy, that's been absolutely brilliant. Really, really appreciate you coming and sort of speaking to everyone. Obviously, you've managed to set everybody asking questions, and obviously further sort of thoughts coming up. Also to Darren and Anthony and Stuart for sort of coming on and talking to us, and for all the rest of you that have raised questions and comments, for those of you that didn't have the audio but have clearly participated. Thank you very much. We're glad that we've been able to provide the session to support you. And if there's any sort of further thoughts on anything else that you might want us to provide sessions on in a similar sort of way to this, if you found this useful, then do email myself or Jason and let us know, because we're more than happy to be able to open these sorts of sessions up for people to sort of share ideas, good practice, etc. If it's something that you're all finding useful, then we're absolutely more than happy to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Amelia. That's anytime. That's good.
Brilliant. And you're on again tomorrow, Tracy?
Yeah, I'll get another pack going.
It's different. Everybody's different, so you're okay. They won't have heard it before.
Okay.
And there's lots of thanks coming through for you as well, Tracy.
No,
and
great. No, thanks.
I will send you some of these as well, because you've had some really nice comments. So I'll send you some of these comments as well, because
Lovely. Thanks, everybody. As I say, I always say, no matter what part of the country, I always still a part of the educational and hospitality and catering team. We don't have the opportunity to share a lot of practices sometimes, and I know for a fact there's a few colleagues of mine up the country, and they're doing really good practice and what have you, and we all sing from the same song sheet, so it's a pleasure to be part of it. Thank you.
No, thank you for your time, Tracy, and everybody that's joined. It's been really useful, and I think we're all learning through this period of change, and I think this is certainly something we've learned from, and to hold something like this and be able to get everybody together to be able to discuss, ask questions, give feedback is absolutely superb and really useful. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, been a great session.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. We've got lots of information coming through for us as well, Jason, so that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. That's really useful. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So I'm going to end the session there, but obviously if you're still typing in, don't worry, I'll leave the session on, so to speak, but we're going to sort of we're going to stop talking, as it were. So the session will end, so feel free to obviously leave, but if you're still typing, I'm actually going to leave everything open, because then we'll still sort of see feedback that's coming through about anything that you might want support with, or any mitigation, etc., or anything that sort of Jason requested as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a really great afternoon, and for those of you that are going on holiday, yeah, have a lovely time. Even if you're sort of staying at home, take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.